It's the most magical time of the year, and I'm not talking about Christmas. I'm talking about the NFL season. So make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. Get the most live NFL games all in one place. Right now, you can save $85 when you bundle NFL Sunday Ticket with YouTube TV. Sign up today at youtubetv.com/Spotify. Device and content restrictions apply. Discount applied to first 4 months of YouTube TV, then $72.99 a month. Ends August 29th. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. No refunds.
School is back, and Dick's Sporting Goods has what you need to win your year. We've got everything from cleats to Sambas, dunks, and more. Plus, the hottest looks from Nike, Jordan, and Adidas. Find your first day fits in-store or online at dicks.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
From the field, to the film room, to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Armchair Scouts. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast, Deibs. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his podcast, Party on Broad. Deibs, how are you doing tonight?
What's up, guys? We finally made it. Week 0 college football. A lot of time and effort has been put into the offseason, just covering some of the top names. Not a lot of big games in week 0, but there's some headliners, and I can't wait to get into it.
All right. We're also joined by his co-host on Party on Broad, Ryan. Give him a follow on Twitter at Philly Sports PSA. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I cannot wait for Saturday to actually watch some real college football.
All right, absolutely. And last but not least, I'm joined by my co-host on Chalk Talk, Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at MarkHenryJr_. Be sure to check out his Tough Cover radio show every Saturday. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Obviously, I'm in a different part of the country than Shane is, but it feels like football outside. I went outside. I had to put pants on. I mean, it's like it is officially football weather almost here, at least in the Northeast. So definitely I'm ready to get going. I know you don't want to wish away the summer, but I want football. I'm ready. It's here.
Thank God Mark is wearing pants. That's all.
Yeah, I was going to say, here in the South, we wear pants every time we go outside, but maybe that's just a South thing.
Shorts aren't pants. Ha, ha, ha.
I fully want to wish away summer because we're coming off of 3 straight days of 107 degrees. We only hit 99 today, which is great. I mean, it feels like football weather here. It's gross. But want to welcome you guys to the Armchair Scouts. Those of you that followed the BGN draft show, this is going to be a really similar format for you guys. This is going to be a shorter show on the Eagles Pinpool Network feed. Be about 30 minutes a week. We know you guys are here for Eagles, but we also want to give some coverage to the NFL draft and to college football throughout the season. If you're not interested in that at all and you just want to pick us up in the offseason, we'll be doing our positional rankings for each position group leading into the NFL draft as always. But during the year, we just want to give you guys some names that you can watch for. And so we're going to have 3 segments on this show every week. The first segment will be our Eagles prospect profile. Each of the 4 of us will take a player that's playing in I won't necessarily say always a high profile game, but a player that we're going to have our eye on for some matchup reason. that weekend that might be interesting to the Eagles. And so as you're watching games, you can look for those names and begin to familiarize yourself with the draft. Then we'll have a Player of the Week segment. Think of this as fantasy football for college, but you only get one pick a week. We can't repeat a pick all season long, so you've got to balance that out a little bit. And we will have a scoring system for that. We'll decide amongst ourselves who wins each week. And, the winner will get 3 points, second place 2, third place 1, last place gets 0, and we'll track that throughout the season. Then we'll have a Game of the Week breakdown. We'll talk about the biggest game of the week, what you should be watching for. We'll give you some advice on the spread, what it's saying, and all of that stuff. So we're going to dive into it with Week 0. We can say up front they botched Week 0 this year. There's only 4 games. None of them are particularly good. Maybe that's not a great way to sell you on the start of the podcast, but we're going to get into it anyway. So we're going to kick it off here with our Eagles prospect profiles. Ryan, I'll throw it to you first. Who's the guy that people should keep their eyes on this weekend from an Eagles perspective?
So again, as you said, there's not very many games, and shockingly enough, there's not a ton of prospects to really look at from Delaware State. So I decided to go a little bit deeper guy, day 3 guy, maybe back end of day 3 even. But this is a guard of SMU, Savion Byrd. He came originally out of high school to Oklahoma, transferred over to SMU, and has played both left and right guard with pretty good success. He's very good in the run game, able to kind of diagnose off the snap very quickly, and very good with his hand placement. Just seems to be like a guy that is intelligent and kind of very aware of the line and what his role is in that line, whether it is on the left or the right. And again, with the Eagles, obviously we have a new right guard in Mekhi Becton, but after this year, we don't really know what we have after whether or not if it's going to be Mekhi or if it's going to be more of let's try Tyler Steen out. So why not kind of look for some more replacements? And, again, they're always looking at depth on the O-line. So, I went with Byrd from SMU. And as a guy, I'm going to be certainly watching in that game this week.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump in second here because I'm also watching a guy from SMU. And it's their tight end, RJ Maryland. That name might sound familiar to you guys, and it might sound familiar for a bad reason because he's the son of Russell Maryland, who was a former number 1 overall pick by the Dallas Cowboys. We can all boo him and still root for his son if he becomes an Eagle, but RJ Maryland is 6'4", 233 pounds. Last season, he had 34 receptions for 518 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was named first team All-AAC. I think when you watch Maryland, it stands out to me that he's explosive. He threatens the seam well. I think he's got pretty good run after the catch ability. They used him in the slot quite a bit because he's got strong hands over the middle of the field. But they can put him in line. They put him out wide, so there's some versatility in his alignment. And we all know the Eagles could use, tight end depth behind Dallas Goedert. He does struggle as a run blocker, especially when you ask him to block in line, and so that's tough. To have a tight end too that can't really run block. It sort of telegraphs what you're doing out of 12 personnel, but maybe that's something he can clean up and work on. I've done this long enough that I remember saying Dallas Goedert was maybe not a very good run blocker coming out of college, and that turned out to be very wrong. So there's that. I do think he tips off his routes at times too. He kind of chops his feet before he drops his hips. He'll telegraph, kind of lean into his routes and things. But that's all stuff you can clean up. He's probably a day 3 prospect. We'll see how this year goes. He might even go back to school for his senior season. But I think he's got a lot of athletic upside. So if you're watching interior offensive line tape for SMU, keep an eye out for RJ Maryland as well. Deibs, who is your Eagles prospect to keep an eye on this week?
I'm going with a guy. Sorry to make this like an SMU fest, but it's...
There are only 4 games, so.
But, yeah, back-to-back SMU. Give me Elijah Roberts, a guy that might be the most underrated player in college football. He had 10 sacks last year, 13th best in the NCAA. He was a former Miami transfer. He had 62 pressures last season, 19.7 pass rush win rate, which was fourth best in the group of five. And he had a pass rush grade of 93.3 on true pass sets per Pro Football Focus. Only James Pierce Jr., who was arguably edge one in this year's draft, and UCLA's Liatu Latu ranked higher last year than Elijah Roberts. That grade was also better than Chop Robinson, who was a first-round pick by the Miami Dolphins. As a prospect, he's not an elite athlete. He doesn't have great size. He's only 6'2", like 250 pounds-ish. I know this says 278. But he ran a 4.78 40-yard dash. For context, Liatu Latu and Jalix Hunt ran a 4.64. He's kind of more so on par with a guy like Marshawn Nealon, who ran a 4.75, but great play strength, great upper body strength. His speed to power is off the charts. Maybe this could be a day three guy that, surprises some at the Reese's Senior Bowl and kind of builds up his draft stock. So keep an eye out for Elijah Roberts, who it's going to be a different kind of beast for SMU this season, changing conferences, but he's going to have a lot of opportunity as well.
All right, 3 for 3 with SMU players. Mark, are you going to SMU too?
I'm not. I'm switching it up. I'm going to FSU, 3 letters, but not SMU. And it's probably the best player playing this weekend in terms of the early mocks out there, and that's because Deibs and Ryan and Shane are far more prepared than I am at this point. I'm still on the surface level, so I'm going with Patrick Payton, a guy that I've kind of started diving into the first-round prospects, and the more I look at Patrick Payton, the more obsessed I get. And this is, you guys know how I feel about edge rushers. The taller, the better. 6'5" is always going to get my ears to perk up a little bit. And you watch him, and he uses that length, and he uses those arms to create space on the edge. And he had 7 sacks last year, 14.5 tackles for loss. And, yeah, it says right there, reportedly gained 15 pounds this offseason. When he showed up in 2021, he was 210. He's now 254. So over the past 4 years, he's put on 44 pounds. But, yeah, the report was 15 pounds this offseason. He is definitely more filled out if you look at him, and he just looks like a freak. He looks like a 6'5" NFL pick, first-round D-end. He every bit looks the part. And you look, Jared Verse leaves, Braden Fisk leaves. They clearly do a good job at developing defensive line there in Norvell's system there at Florida State. I think that's going to continue with Patrick Payton. I think he's going to be one of the very best defensive players in the country.
Mark and tall defensive ends. Name a more
iconic
duo.
I have a type.
He's my number 3 edge rusher in this draft. Obviously very early. I have Michael Williams and I have James Pierce Jr. rated higher. Abdul Carter should be thrown into that group. But I mean, this is the headliner. Patrick Payton versus Haynes King is what we're watching on Saturday.
All right, so there you have it. As you're watching college football, watching our game of the week, and apparently watching SMU, there's some names you can keep your eye on that might interest the Eagles come next draft cycle. But let's transition now to our Player of the Week segment. So, again, think of this as fantasy football for college, but you only get one pick a week. Each week, we're going to pick somebody who we think is going to put up really good stats. We will discuss amongst ourselves after the games who won, and we'll track this throughout the season and give scoring updates. Last year, this was neck and neck between Deibs, Mark, and I all season long. This year, we brought Ryan in to, be down here while we're all up here on scoring, hopefully. So,
you just feel better?
Yeah. So now this week, we made the executive decision this week, since there are only 4 games. We're going to make picks. We're not going to score the picks. We're not going to count it against guys because there's so few people to pick from. So, Mark, I'll throw it to you here first. Who was your player of the week?
I went with DJ Uiagalelei, DJU, as he's mostly referred to. And I think people have just thrown DJU in the trash. And I think people forget that back in the day before quarterbacks starting as freshmen and transfer portals, like we generally did have to wait on the non-top guys to develop in college. And now we've seen DJU. This is his third team in 3 years, but he's gotten 3. This is going to be his third year as a full-time starter. And you look at what Jordan Travis was at Florida State before his breakout year last year, and you compare those stats to DJU stats the last 2 years at Clemson and Oregon State, it's not that different. So I think DJU in Norvell's scheme with just a higher level of talent around him than he had at Oregon State last year is going to look a lot better. And he's 24. He's older. This is going to be the most finished product version that we're going to see of DJU. I think that Norvell is going to use his athleticism and use his weapon as being a runner more than maybe Oregon State did last year and more like Clemson did 2 years ago. So I'm pretty high on Florida State. I have them winning the ACC, and DJU, I think a lot of people is kind of the holdup to picking Florida State to win the ACC. To me, he's a factor of why I am picking them. I like him a lot more than I like Klubnik at Clemson, but that doesn't have much to do with this game. Not a lot of options to pick from, though. So I think, if anything, Florida State should put up some points on a Georgia Tech defense that was one of the worst in the ACC last year.
All right. Not to tip our game of the week too much, but that's it, and we'll talk a little more about it when we get there. Deibs, who did you have for your player of the week this week?
You're going with the SMU quarterback, correct?
Yes.
I'm just throwing that out. Okay, just want to make sure. All right, I'm going kind of similar route with Mark. Give me Lawrence Tuafili out of Florida State. He's a running back, a dual threat kind of dude. Ended last season on a high in that conference championship game, 118 rushing yards on 10 carries. He added some weight this offseason. And you look at, the skill position for Florida State. I'll get into why I'm a little concerned about Florida State in just a little bit. But there's not a lot at the skill position for the Seminoles. And I think that's going to further emphasize Tuafili's unique skills as a receiver. I expect him to get around 10 to 15 touches. And like Mark said, this is a Georgia Tech defense that struggled against the run last year. They allowed over 200 yards on the ground a game. And Georgia Tech has a new defensive coordinator in Tyler Santucci this past offseason. So as they kind of figure it out on defense with that run defense, give me the guy that I think will have the most touches in that backfield for Florida State.
All right. So there is another shout out to Florida State. Ryan, 3 for 3. I don't know if there's anybody else you could take from Florida State. But
there absolutely is not. And since you have the SMU guy, I'm going to go with a Georgia Tech guy, and that's quarterback Haynes King. This is a guy who threw for 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns, rushing for another 737 yards, 10 touchdowns, and was actually one of 2 quarterbacks or players, I guess, theoretically, in the Power 5 to pass for 2,800, 25, rush for 7 and 10, joining Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels of LSU. So he definitely is going to build off of that. Outside of a few players here and there for Florida State, I think their defense is certainly less forceful than they were last year. So I think he's going to be able to, do some things there against that team. And, again, when there's not that many people to pick from, you got to go with the best chance, right?
All right. So we're going to be probably quarterback and running back heavy throughout most of these player of the weeks. It's hard. We discovered last year it's kind of hard to pick other positions at times, but I'm going to go with the SMU quarterback, Preston Stone. I just look at, again, quarterbacks are a golden goose when it comes to winning competitions like this. He's playing Nevada, who was 112th last year in passing yards per game allowed. SMU should win this game in a landslide. The biggest fear, honestly, is that SMU runs away with this early and they lean on a strong running game without Stone putting up a lot of stats, but they should steamroll Nevada. And so maybe your guys' picks are better because FSU Georgia Tech might be a lot better game. or maybe SMU decides they want to get Stone a lot of looks early in the season here. So it could go either way, but in the blowout, hopefully Stone can put up some good stats for me. So, all right, there you have it. That is our player of the week. Let's transition over now to our game of the week. We've talked about it. We've talked all around it. It is number 10 Florida State versus Georgia Tech.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
At BlueNile.com, you can find endless ways to make your moments sparkle. From classic and timeless jewelry gifts to creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. And right now, you can save up to 40% on fine jewelry and 25% on engagement ring settings during the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale, going on now. Go to BlueNile.com to shop the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale and save up to 40%. That's BlueNile.com.
I'm Victoria Cash, and I want to invite you to a place called Lucky Land, where you can play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. So what are you waiting for? The best way to discover your luck is to spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com. That's LuckyLandSlots.com. And get lucky today. At Lucky Land.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
I did not realize until I started looking at this game more that this game is being played overseas. Did you guys? I'm sure you guys all knew that.
Dublin.
Yeah, in Dublin. I like even double check to make sure like there's not a Dublin in Georgia, is there? It is Dublin, Ireland, which is kind of wild. It would have blown my mind as a college kid, like flying to Dublin, Ireland for a football game. But it is at noon Eastern time on ESPN on Saturday. Florida State is favored by 11.5 points in this one. Florida State out for revenge after last year being left out of the college football playoff as an undefeated team. Obviously, the Jordan Travis injury that it put the committee in a tough spot. It really stinks. Hopefully, with the 12-team playoff, we don't ever find ourselves in one of those situations again. Mark, what are you looking for in this game? And do you have a pick on either side that you like here?
Yeah, Florida State, the line opened at minus 13.5. It's down to minus 10.5. It seems like Georgia Tech is a really popular pick to keep this game close. Yeah. I don't see it that way. I think Florida State just has a different level of talent all over the field. Haynes King had 16 picks last year, and I don't think you can do that against Florida State's defense. They return 69% of their production from last season on defense. Offense, not as much, but they do return a lot of their offensive line. And they had one of the biggest transfer portal classes in the entire country with 14 transfers that are expected to get time. So normally I would say that that's a negative early on in the season, but the best coach in the country at getting production out of the transfer portal has probably been Mike Norvell at Florida State. You look at Jared Verse kind of transferring from, I forget the name of the school now. I know it's a purple. I forget the name of the school. It's like a D2 or a D3 or a JUCO type school that Jared Verse came from. And Mike Norvell turned him into every bit of a first round pick. And they've been really good at being able to find guys that can plug in and play right away at that level. I think they're going to do that again right here, right away. And I think I don't usually make picks this way, but all of the people kind of pumping up Georgia Tech make me a little bit more confident that Florida State is going to take care of business.
It was Albany, I believe.
Albany, yes.
All right. You said like purple helmet. I was thinking like ECU.
TCU.
No, it was way lower than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Albany purple? I need to look it up.
Yeah. All right. So, Mark, you said you had Florida State?
Yes. Yeah.
You got Florida State in this one. Deibs, what are you looking at here?
I'm going to go just talk a little bit about Georgia Tech because we've been talking a lot about Florida State. Just don't sleep on these guys. In 2023, they took down Drake May's Tar Heels. They took down the Miami Hurricanes. They only lost by 1 score to the Georgia Bulldogs. They had some really bad losses, but last year was their first winning season since 2018. They led the ACC in rushing and sacks allowed last year, and their offensive line is as legit as it gets. We don't talk about it enough. They have all 5 starters standing 6'4" or taller, 4 starters back from last year, all weigh over 300 pounds. All juniors are older. Ryan touched on Jamal Haynes, who averaged over 6 yards per carry last year. And this is a team that has another year in the system. I think they're trending in the right way. I think this game absolutely boils down to the trenches. I'm definitely worried about the Georgia Tech run defense, but I don't buy the stock on Florida State. Like, other than offensive line as a group, they're maybe a top 10 unit. I don't think they have quality at quarterback. I don't think they have quality at wide receiver. In the secondary, they have Patrick Payton, who's legit as it gets, but they lost a lot of guys. They hit the transfer portal hard, and they did a really good job. The only reason why I'm going with Florida State in this one is because of Mark Norvell, and I think he's a tremendous coach. I think this game is close. I think it's going to be like a 27-23 game with Florida State, probably getting a couple of big plays, and that being the difference in the fourth quarter. So give me Florida State, but I think this is a way closer game than people think. I think Florida State's overrated. I think Georgia Tech's underrated. That's my take.
All right. Ryan, thoughts on that, and how do you see this game shaking out?
Yeah, I lean a little bit more on the Deibs side of thing. Listen, I get Florida State. Probably has all the reasons in the world to come out in 2024, play pissed off, and prove that they were screwed. And unfortunately, they just lost too many people. And while they did hit the transfer portal hard, as Deibs said, again, it's I don't believe that's going to show its dividends enough to kind of overcome what they lost. Now, as Mark had said earlier, the line keeps going down, and then now it's at 10.5. That to me, again, says to me, at least anyway, that this game is going to be kind of close. And I do agree that it'll be a very close game. It'll be a one-score game. But unfortunately, again, I just think, the way that the Georgia Tech, offense matches up against Florida State defense, I do give that edge slightly to Florida State. And again, I think the coaching in here, especially this early in, a hostile, well, maybe not a hostile environment, but a different environment, I should say, in Dublin, Ireland. I give that nod to Florida State in a very, very close game. Like I said, probably, as Deibs said, 3-4 points, maybe even something, towards the end of the fourth quarter there, late in the game. So.
All right. Well, there you have it. Some thoughts on the game. Should be good rushing attacks on both sides of the ball. I mean, Deibs mentioned Georgia Tech leading the ACC last year in rushing yards, 203 yards per game. Florida State averaged 150 rushing yards per game last year. Now, it's unfortunate that we're not going to see the triple option attack. I try not to be bitter about that for years. Yeah, Deibs.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a completely different offense than what we saw last year for the Seminoles, where there was a lot of, balls, hero balls, contested catches thrown to Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman down those sidelines. I think, like Mark said, this is going to be a much more heavy rushing attack for Florida State this season. So keep an eye out. That's why I went with Toafili. I think we're going to see a lot of design runs with DJU. This game just boils down to how much do you believe in DJU. I don't think he elevates guys around him. And Mark, I disagree. I think he had the best offensive line supporting him last year at Oregon State. So I don't see it with the skill positions for Florida State.
Florida State returns an entire offensive line, though, this year.
They're good, but that's probably their best unit. Yeah. We didn't even talk about Darius Washington, who I think is their best player on the offensive line. I covered him a few nights ago, but I don't think is the best unit in college football. Like, I have a hard time trying to find where this team is exceptional, and I think they're just overrated. Sorry.
I think a lot of it we don't know because they're transfers who haven't gotten their time yet. But these are 5-star transfers and 5-star recruits once upon a time who maybe didn't get an opportunity at an Alabama or at another school. So, or even some guys that are 4 or 5-star recruits at Florida State that haven't gotten a chance because they were blocked by last year's guys. So, this was kind of the test of Norvell. I'm buying in on Norvell. Just absolutely able to kind of keep it rolling.
Just to piggyback off of that, Marvin Jones Jr. transfer from Georgia. The Georgia Bulldogs, 6'5", major 5-star recruit, went to Florida State, looking to kind of follow in that Jared Verse shadow. So keep an eye on Marvin Jones Jr. That could be a major breakout star.
I think they have a big transfer end.
I'm sorry.
Me? I was just going to say that Marvin Jones.
What?
There's a wide receiver, Marvin Jones Jr. is what Ryan was saying there. I think.
No. His name is Marvin Jones Jr. I don't know.
Oh wait, didn't that once change his to senior? I don't know.
Oh, it might have been senior. You're right.
It's hard to like read Mark's nonverbal cues at times when he freezes. I'm like, he started to point somewhere and his frame froze for a second, and I don't know where he's gonna go. But I'm most disappointed that it's not the triple option anymore. Like for years, I watched Georgia Tech, like almost like they were a second team because I love the triple option, and they were one of the few teams that still ran it. So pour one out for the triple option. I'm gonna end the show here in a minute and go run the triple option in College Football 25 just for the sake of nostalgia. So, nice. But I think that's gonna about do it. Do you guys have any final thoughts about the college football weekend? Any hot take you need to fire off about what's going to happen in the draft this far out before we get out of here? Ryan, you got anything?
This far out? Everything we're talking about right now will change.
All right, there you go.
I saw a take today that I'm ready to get back, that piggyback off of it. It's Dane Bruler, right? Is that how you pronounce it? Bruler? Put out, it's not even my take, but I see it. And he's saying Abdul Carter is the number 1 edge rusher in this class. And remember when I was pumping up Trey Walker for Georgia? I remember being one of the first to say he's a first-round pick and climbing up the draft boards, all that kind of stuff. I see a similar kind of projectile for Abdul Carter. He is an elite athlete, a Parsons-esque level athlete that could blow up during the draft process. Abdul Carter. And there was a mock put out by another major medium that had him going number 1 overall. So the hype train is real for Abdul Carter.
All right. Mark, you got any thoughts hot takes you need to fire off before we get out of here?
Yeah, I feel like everyone's saying Luther Burden is the best wide receiver in the country and one of the best players in the country, and he is. He's absolutely one of the best players in the country. He's not the best wide receiver in the country, though, in my opinion, because I think the best wide receiver in the country is at Arizona, Teteroa McMillan. I think he's unbelievable, 6'5", 210. There's some Roma Dunze to him, I'd say, maybe a little bit bigger, but I think people are looking at Luther Burden as a top 5 pick, and I don't even think people are putting Teteroa McMillan as a top 10 pick. He's a half a foot taller than Luther Burden, by the way. Luther Burden's 5'11", McMillan's 6'5". He had better numbers, too. I think McMillan and Noah Fafita are going to put up huge numbers at Arizona this year.
Yeah, you're a big Arizona guy. And I think this draft is a lot of fun. I think this draft and college football season is going to be a blast. Mm-hmm. I think it's light years away, especially at like the defensive line and wide receivers just as deep. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've got one. The number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft.
Here we go. Let's write it down.
It's quarterback Connor Weigman out of Texas A&M.
Wow.
I mean, you say this on a podcast on August 20th, and if you're right, you go back and you clip this out and you put it on social media. You're like, I was clairvoyant. And on the 99% chance I'm wrong, no one will ever remember this moment. So that's how you podcast in August as we kick off the college football season.
So what you're saying is we should end the show by doing this at least once. so that we can all,
yeah, everyone's got one. Yeah.
Yeah. We should. I mean, we should definitely do it we could get a lot of run out of this. You just got to put it out there. So.
You're right.
Deibs, do you have something else before we get out of here?
Abdul Carter will be the number 1 pick in the 2025 NFL draft. I just want to make that out there. So you can click that.
Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you for joining us for the inaugural episode of Armchair Scouts. This show will live stream every Tuesday night on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. In the podcast feed, it's going to air on Thursdays just to space out our shows a little bit. So if you're enjoying the show, whether you're listening live or listening on the podcast feed later, please be sure you subscribe to the Eagles Pinpool Network feed. We got 6 shows a week. 5 of those 6 shows are tremendously Eagles or NFC East focused. This one, of course, is our sole college show to kind of get you guys acquainted with those draft prospects. So give us a like, give us a 5-star rating and review. You can check us out on Twitter. I'm at Shane Half NFL. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. Deibs is at Mr. Crockpot. Ryan is at Philly Sports PSA. And we will catch you guys next week for another episode of the Armchair Scouts.